Hello and welcome to DCBtv. I'm delighted to welcome you all once again here to our weekly episode, and I hope we have overcome all of the technological issues. I hope you can all hear me okay. If you can't, please feel free to send me a little message. We've got more treats in store for you again this week, and we're delighted to welcome you to our virtual performance space here on Facebook Live. Various different things in store for you, including a very special guest that we have in Keith Kelly later on. He's going to be filling us in on some of the information about the Global Band Room podcast, about his work with the Ballinasloe Town Band and with the Bands of Ireland. We've got a couple of little videos for you in there as well. We're going to be going to Conductor's Corner, and this time I'm going to be showing you a video on the screen here, and it is actually based upon the virtual performance that we're going to give you now, our little virtual premiere, just in a few moments, of one of the pieces that I've arranged myself for the band. I'll be trying to give you some insight in terms of the direction process for that specific piece of music. Hopefully a little bit of insight into the process. As well as that, if that wasn't enough, we're also going to be welcoming some of the DCB members once again. And I'm delighted to welcome Alan Pritchett and Joanna Kenny with us. So we have a flautist and a trumpet player with us, and a little bit of an international feel with it this week. So feel free to connect in with us on Facebook by sending in some messages. Our producers backstage or online, Kieran Sharkey, is waiting to respond to any questions or queries that you might have. But feel free to send in any comments, questions or queries. Share and like away and spread the news about DCBtv. So as always, what we want to do is share a virtual performance with you. And again, as I mentioned in episode 1 last week, we were delighted to welcome the Boher Boy Band and their conductor Andrew up to Dublin in February. Again, it was the last performance, the live performance that the band had. Little did we know at that time, very soon thereafter, we'd be going into a full lockdown process. Not only can we not perform for public, but we can't actually rehearse with each other at the minute. If any of the bands internationally or locally, nationally, have any ideas about how they're going to overcome some of those processes in the next few months, please feel free to send a message to us. Again, stick it in the thread down below. We'd love to start an open conversation about what you're thinking about in terms of processing out of lockdown. I was delighted to see a local choir that I've worked with before, the Lucan Gospel Choir, have tried to do some social distancing choir group performance or rehearsal, in their cars in a car park. I would love to know how you got on with that process. Is that something we can do with bands? I don't know, but let's keep the conversation open and see how we do. So, going again back to that performance that we had back in February, this was a piece of music that originally found itself developed for orchestra, and more specifically the RTE Concert Orchestra, based upon the well-known tune of O Rocher de Vahawalya. And just as a little useful piece of information, you should check out the Dawn Chorus at the minute, which is a nice social distancing project that's been brought for people to sing various different tunes, well-known tunes that they know as they transition out of lockdown, so that we can hopefully all meet on a central platform, be it a football field or a community centre, at some point together and sing some of these tunes. And this is one of them, O Rocher de Vahawalya. I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the piece and how I brought that piece to its fruition for the orchestra, and then the iteration for the wind band in this sense. To retitle it, I decided that we would give it the title Gather the Gales. So here is Dublin Concert Band with their performance of Gather the Gales back in February in Windmill Lane.
band since I was, I think, 12. I always wanted to play in bands. My dad and my family, my aunt and uncles played in bands. I just thought that was the coolest thing. I had the coolest friends, and I wanted to be one of those people. That's how I kind of got into banding. And then that kind of became my career. So I'm a full-time musician in the Defence Forces, and I'm based in Band 2 Brigade in Athlone.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm just going to reintroduce you because I'm told that there was no sound. I will get this right yet. Third time's a charm. I am delighted to welcome both Joanna and Alan to DCB, both members of the Dublin Concert Band. And what I was saying when I was in mute of some sort, I hope you can hear me now, was that yes, Toby, we do regard you very much as an Irish person now. But it's nice to see continuing international flavour. Of course, Toby was with us last week. Alan, a little bit about yourself, please, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to everybody at home.
My name is Alan. I play trumpet in the band for the last 5 years. I've been in bands since I was 12 as well. I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm working at the moment, and that's about it.
Good. And so just to give us a little bit more about your background and where you're from, how long have you been in Ireland now, and where did you specifically come from, and what was banding like there?
I'm originally from Newfoundland in Canada, and there was a few bands in the city. I'm from St. John's. I kind of started music in boys and girls brigades. So there was marching bands and things like that and that. So believe it or not, I started out as a parade drummer for a short period of time. And then I switched to playing a bugle, if you can imagine. And shortly after that, I think I was about 14, I made my way into a bigger 50-piece marching band.
Wow.
And I came to Ireland in 2000 just for a different thing to do work-wise, and I've been here ever since.
That's amazing. That's brilliant. Joanna, just going back to yourself, I'm really intrigued by some of the work that you're doing, obviously, in the Defence Forces at the minute, because you guys have been on the front line and supporting frontline workers as well. So the musician role has really had to pivot to something else. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're right. As a colleague of mine said to me last week, we're not musicians anymore. We don't play music for a living anymore. The director of the Defence Forces School of Music, when this crisis and pandemic began, he obviously became aware very quickly that we wouldn't be able to rehearse. We can't play at a social distance in our current premises. So he volunteered us to aid the civil authority through the Defence Forces. And we did get the call then to come and support the HSE. And now my band in Athlone, Band 2 Brigade, and the number one band based in Dublin are both contact tracing in the current camp at the moment. So I have an ops job. It's bizarre.
That's amazing. And can you give us maybe some insight, if you're allowed to? You can tell me being controversial or not, but the actual process, because we hear so much about contact tracing, but what is it specifically that these are doing?
So it's a two-step process. In the first step, we call confirmed patients with COVID-19, and we ask them to prepare a list of all of the close contacts they've had since 48 hours before they became ill. And usually that's kind of if they're in work and they work close with someone, they might give some work colleagues, or it's who's in their household, things like that. That's the first step. So we collect those contacts. And then the second step is we call those contacts to inform them that they have been in close contact with the person who's tested positive. At the moment, all close contacts are being referred for a test themselves, because it's been kind of shown now that close contacts are the most likely people to test positive for COVID-19. Some people are aware that they've been in contact with someone. It might be, their partner or child or someone. Other people might not be aware, and they might get a bit of a shock when we call them on the phone. So I suppose you have to be really sympathetic to people, because it is a really hard time. And getting a phone call from someone introducing themselves as Joanna, I'm a private in the Irish Army, and I'm calling you on behalf of the HSE. Is it okay to we have a conversation? Are you free to talk? That's a scary phone call. I think if I got that, I'd be a bit like, ooh, what's this all about? So we need to really kind of sympathetic to people. It's a tough time.
Absolutely. Big responsibility for you guys. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Especially transitioning to what is essentially, because it is full-time music in the Army Band, right?
Yeah, I was laughing at myself. I was saying to Paul, like, the first day that I went in, I mean, I haven't used a computer since college. I don't have a desktop. I don't need one. Pen and paper and pencils for music is fine. And the first day that we went in to get our training on how to use the system and the scripts and all that kind of thing, when we finished up, I struggled to find how to shut down the computer. I was like asking the guy beside me, like, where is shutdown on these new window things? Where is it? Like, it's just so out of practice. Yeah.
I know, especially when you're out of the habit. Absolutely, Alan. Back home in Newfoundland, or maybe this is home now, obviously, but where you're from originally. What is the context of COVID-19 and the pandemic? How's it hit them, and how's it affecting maybe some of the bands and musical groups that you would have been involved in?
They've been very lucky. They've shut the island down rather quickly. All the ferries and the airports are virtually closed. You need to have permission from the government to enter. They haven't had a detection in about almost 3 weeks, I believe.
Wow.
Their tourism industry is probably going to suffer, so I guess they're going to push the staycation thing. But I think in total they've only had 2 or 3 deaths. Like, they really shut things down extremely quickly. But like, given that it's a northerly place with only 500,000 people on an island the size of Ireland, there's no train system anymore. So I think people were able to find ways to get around the risks.
Amazing. That's amazing.
My parents are fine, which is great.
Yeah, most important. I'm
A
glad.
lot of people are fine.
Good.
One incident, one funeral home had 170 contacts from one funeral.
Wow.
Which was most of like I say, they shut it down early, so things are looking good there.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear your parents are doing well. Do you check in with them online? Do you do the whole Zoom and Skype thing? Are they okay? How are they for that?
They're very good, actually. We do the online quizzes since all this started because I have brothers and sisters throughout Canada, and I actually Skype my parents and WhatsApp them while I'm driving through the car speaker, so I talk to them all the time.
Amazing, brilliant. Obviously, both of you are musicians and are members of DCB. So, with the contact tracing aside, for example, Joanna, are you managing to maintain practice, or are you like others that are maybe have a little bit of anxiety about an instrument, so you're leaving it to one side? What's going on for you at the minute with music?
So at the moment, and Paul will hopefully agree with me, I do try and practice every day except Sunday. Now, it's easy for me to practice every day because I've come from a position where I was playing every day anyway. So, when we were discussing this in our last DCB chat, who's playing, who's not playing, it was very easy for me to transition from going into rehearsals to just practicing by myself. And I kind of have that background from having gone to college and studying music of practicing. I suppose at the beginning of this crisis as well, when I was in contact tracing, I went from playing and teaching all the time to doing absolutely nothing. And that was kind of scary, and I thought, I'm going to have to structure my day. So practice actually became a great tool to, I'm going to do this from 10 to 11, and then I might have a cup of coffee, and from 12 to 1, I'll look at this.
Yeah, and are you? I mean, what is your process or thinking about maybe coming out of lockdown? Where let's say that you've got that first concert or first rehearsal coming up. What's your pathway? Have you thought about that yet, or am I asking a prying question at this stage?
No, I suppose. For me, it's about like doing little and doing often. I say that to my students as well. You don't have to be doing lots all the time. Doing a little and doing often will actually get you really good results in the long term. Like with other things like sports and exercise, a little bit and often. And I think as well, apart from playing, I'm doing lots of listening to music, and there's so many resources available currently at the moment. Professional musicians are putting so much stuff on their platforms, including YouTube, and it's all free because they're trapped at home too. They have nothing to do. For example, I'm following Emily. And she's first with the World Concerto Band. She's in Amsterdam with nothing to do. So every couple of days she's throwing up YouTube tutorials on how she practices or how she might prepare for something. I just think that's amazing as well. And that's the way to practice without actually putting your instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good advice. Little and often, especially at the minute, at a time where kind of more compressive practicing could actually do more harm than good as well. Especially out of the context if you're used to ensemble participation more often than not. It's good to do less than often. I know if it was me and I still had a tuba going on at the minute, I'd be doing lots of long notes and holding them, sustained notes, and lots of breathing exercises. Alan, what about yourself? This is a bit of a loaded question because I'm aware that you have a chanter behind you. So whilst you are a trumpet player with DCB, I can see the chanter, and we'll come to that in a second. But are you managing to maintain the trumpet, because you were studying anyway before this, so kind of time wasn't on your side as before the pandemic hit, isn't that right?
No, time wasn't on my side at all. I've been studying pretty much constantly since September. So when I'm not working, I'm in a little study corner I have in my shed. So I haven't done any practicing since September. Like basically none at all. It's been under the bed ever since. My plan was to play with the band over the summer and do all the performances in the park and as many practices as I could and see everybody. Because now that I'm finished studying the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to miss everybody. And I guess that doesn't look like it's going to happen now. So there's some Morricone stuff that I think would entice me to practice because I love the sound of it so much. I would have to build some range, so that's a good enticement to do just that.
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. I've been speaking to various different musicians, community level, people who are parents of young children who are playing music, and then professionals as well. And for the most part, most of them I think have done a very clever approach, a very intellectual approach in saying that here's how I'm going to maintain myself during a time where I don't know where I'm going to start again. Here's what I'm going to do, which is why I asked you the question, Joanna, when we start to transition out with a hope to maybe, resuming some sort of normal practice. And then others have just said to themselves, if I think about this too often, it's going to give me more anxiety that I'm annoyed at myself about not playing. So I'm just going to say to myself, actually, I'm going to put that away for 2 weeks. I'm going to put it away for 3 weeks and lock it away. So now I'm locking it away psychologically in my head as well. Whereas, and I'm sure you're both the same, and musicians are terrible for this, where we want to practice, or we want to get to that exercise, or we want to do that something. But actually, we're doing ourselves more harm than good psychologically. So it is important to actually say, I'm going to put it on the shelf, and I'll come back to it. And then you figure out the rest of the stuff and find the capacity and the space for it. Alan, I'm going back to the loaded question. Can you give us a couple of notes on the chanter? Or the chanter maybe is it missing a reed? Is that right?
There was a problem with the reed, but I think I fixed it.
Oh.
It's been a long time since I played my pipes. They've been under the bed even longer. Years ago, when I was in a band, we all started families at the same time. So the band kind of took some time off, and then when things got back on the road again, I was looking at my trumpet and I was looking at my pipes, and I said, it's been 20 years at least since I used my trumpet. I just wanted something different. So this now is something that I sit with and do things with when I need a break from studying. It's, believe it or not, it can really drive your nerves mad, but when you're studying and you're sick of studying, it actually calms your nerves.
I was very taken with the fact that because there's a lot of social distancing videos going out from bands and choirs and orchestras, and I couldn't find anything from a bagpipe band, right? So a pipe band per se. That yes, there were some kind of distance videos and you could see them off in a landscape and you just about hear it. But I realized that my eyes weren't maybe connecting in with my ears properly. What I realized is that most of the pipe bands, everybody was doing their piece on a chanter, and then the drums were doing their thing in the video. So, and I caught one, I think it was the Lawrence O'Toole band, who did an amazing piece, but all in their chanters, and it actually sounds really, really well. And it's nice to see that there's continuity in that space as well. Can you give us a 15, 20 second blast of something?
No, I don't play anymore, so... The reed is having problems. Anyway, no one wants to hear any more of that.
I disagree.
You make a fantastic flute player with your technique.
You wouldn't imagine the time that's gone into my hands. It doesn't sound like it now, but I actually needed a break from it. You wouldn't know how much time. A set of pipes is basically, it's physiotherapy for your hands. The music isn't that tough. It's all on the beat. It's easy to read, but it really puts your hands under serious serious pressure.
Wow, you're doing great stuff there, and thanks for sharing that. And I can see you're getting a virtual round of applause. So thank you very much, Joanna. I have one last question for you because we talked obviously the capacity of DCB as a musician and the Defence Forces as a teacher as well. I mean, you're your own student, so are you maintaining productivity? Have you put it to one side, or is it a varied process? What are you doing at the minute? Maybe some people at home would be really interested.
Yeah, so it's kind of very across the board. Some of my teaching has continued online through Zoom, and some haven't. And I suppose that's kind of dependent on some schools of music and also some individual households where maybe devices are an issue, internet is an issue, things like that. But for the most part, I have been teaching on Zoom. This week would mark actually the last week of lessons. So I had a Zoom party and did virtual backgrounds and stuff with the kids this week. A lot of them are preparing for the RA exams, which have gone online. That's been kind of a very interesting process in terms of changing how we prepare for an exam. So that's been something that I've had to learn as well, kind of, and to teach them how to do too. Recording yourself playing is a completely different ballgame to preparing for an exam situation. And while a lot of the kids are kind of happy to do it and they feel that they're going to be very comfortable, I've obviously been talking to them about the fact that, record yourself 2, maybe 3 times and pick the best one. Don't go overboard. And I learned that the hard way. When we were doing the DCB recording, the Heroes, I mean, I have to say, like, when I was doing the first week, I recorded maybe 12 takes, and then I was like, no, I can't do this again. I'm just going to have to put, I think, more preparation into it and less video taken. You can get really obsessive about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the videoing process. Because I know when I was growing up on the drum kit, and quite early on in my career, I ended up doing some recordings for click tracks, and it really exposed the issues in my playing and my performance. And I think I was quite used to kind of continual progress in terms of tempo, and the bands and the orchestras I would have played with, and that kind of musicality. Obviously, when it has a strict tempo, it puts a degree of certainty on it, but it really exposes some of the, in my case, inadequacies, and it really helped me kind of quantize my own playing. So I can understand the pressures that are associated with that, and indeed, in this case, for the likes of exams, obviously that transfers on to parents who are holding on to the camera, etc. as well. But obviously as somebody who works in the Royal Irish Academy of Music, it's great to see so many teachers like yourself that have kind of picked up the gauntlet and said, well, we have to do what we can and with what we can, and maintain some sort of continuity. A last question to both of you, and I'll go to you first of all, Alan. Your first piece of music that you'd like to play when you officially come out of lockdown. What's that piece of music on the stand?
I'm not sure. If you ask me the last piece we played that I really liked, probably A Moment from Morricone. But I haven't gotten that far yet to say what I'd like to play when I get back.
Yeah, I'm asking everybody this, and nobody's thinking about it. Maybe it's just me. I'm thinking about what those first scores are, but certainly that first piece of music that's on the stand when we get out of lockdown. And Joanna, what about yourself? The first piece when you come out of lockdown?
I have an idea. Like 2 weeks before this all happened, Derek said to me, "Oh, by the way, Joanna, we got that piece that you recommended for the repertoire committee, the Aretha Franklin." So I played that in work, and I suggested it to the repertoire committee. I said, "Look, I played this. I sent them on a recording. It's amazing. It's a great crowd pleaser." And so I look forward to playing that with the band. Fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. It would even, I'm going to go so far as to say, it might be amazing to try it before we actually get out of lockdown as well, and then compare and contrast, as they say, to see how we get on. But yeah, a brilliant piece of music. So thank you very much to the both of you for joining us online. When I leave you, you can just leave the meeting. It's as simple as that. But thank you very much for sharing some insight in terms of what life is like at the minute and what life is like without DCB. And I look forward to seeing you both very much, hopefully soon, in person with instruments and some music in front of us. So thanks once again from all of us to Joanna and Alan.
Thanks, Brendan. Bye, everyone.
See you, Joanna.
There we are. That was Joanna and Alan in our Meet the DCB members. And I'm delighted, as always, to meet some of the people that really bring the band together. Some of our wonderful musicians, and indeed people that are associated with the band as well. We're going to meet over the next few weeks. But Joanna and Alan are two brilliant people that are so welcome to see at any time as well. So Thank you very much to them for joining us online. I'm going to take you to DCB Corner, or sorry, the Conductor's Corner for DCB TV now. And this week I'm going to play essentially the video that you've already seen, which is the virtual performance of Gather the Gales. As I've already mentioned, it was a piece of music that was originally commissioned by the RTE Concert Orchestra for essentially for the 1916 commemoration process. So this was in 2016 when this piece was actually delivered. And it was devised specifically for the end of an hour broadcast. And I was asked with about 2 weeks to go to devise a piece of music based upon O Rocher de Vahawalya that had to last roughly about 4.5 minutes long. And that was the brief. So for anybody that is an arranger or a composer, anybody that delivers music of their own, sometimes the easiest thing is to get the shortest and simplest brief and to have that handed over to you and then see where it goes. Now, obviously the complexities of taking what is essentially the same tune on repetition with O Rocher de Vahawalya over and over is really difficult for 4.5 minutes. So for this episode, I decided to talk to you a little bit roughly around the idea of how we transition from conductor, composer, arranger, and where creativity kind of falls within the middle of all of that for anybody out there that is intrigued or interested in that type of process. So going back to the piece, I decided then with about 2 weeks to go that we obviously had to have something that was of interest for 4.5 minutes. If you're arranging or composing a piece of music, probably more with the arrangements if I'm being honest. In this case, because it's a popular arrangement, we have to maintain something of a drama, retaining the audience captivation in some way, shape or form, and to simply repeat that piece of music, that motif over and over, simply is not going to cut it. In fact, people will turn off the radio if it's not captivating enough. So I decided that going back to kind of ye oldie structures and references of styles of music in the same vein, something of an air and variations is perfect for this. And taking that a step further, the idea of O Rocher de Vahawalya was to come home and essentially join war, join fight, or join together with a group, so ensemble participation. So the idea for this was that there would be an initial air of the piece of music as we know it, which you would have heard right at the start of the video, and then it transitions into something of a kind of an extension of that slow, broad motif. Then we transition into the second main section, which has a medium pulse around it and a sense of foreboding, essentially moving towards something. More specifically, what I wanted to do was imitate some sense of drudgery or march towards something. And if we think about maybe marching towards war, it's not necessarily something that we're emphatic or positive about. So it was never going to be a quick march. It was something that was almost drawn between that slow and medium tempo. And then moving into the climax of coming together and whatever that event may be, this to me said something of a faster piece of music, and something that has a little bit more drama, a little bit more ornamentation over the original motif, still with enough remnants of that original motif, but something that is so different so the audience can really feel a refreshment in their ear. Hence the reason it kind of goes from a slow air into a kind of mid-march into this jig sense towards the end of the piece. One of the key elements for me as a conductor and as an arranger and composer as well is to gather people's attention. And one of the best ways to do that is to create silence, or as close to silence as possible. So you'll see at the start of the piece, I essentially start with a timpani and a bass drum playing and nothing else, and almost indiscernible, so that you cannot hear it, almost inaudible. And then it slowly graduates up into the moment where you start to hear the introduction to the piece, which I'll play for you now. So you could hear that timpani and bass drum right at the very start. And then it slowly transitions through this introduction. And at this point I'll skip ahead ever so slightly. And here's the first airing of the main motif. And with the conductor hat on now, something that I could have avoided as the arranger, but I strategically didn't. Just at that moment, you can see that Alice on flute and Murren, who's on piccolo, are essentially in octaves through the tune, and this can either be pleasure or pain. So the key to this is obviously that they're remaining in tune. The intonation is absolutely perfect, as they did here, really well performed. But we have a motif in the clarinets that accompanies that cannot overpower. It has communication and rhythm, but it needs to make sure that it still has harmonic blend, and as I spoke about last week, almost a sense of harmonic pulsing. It gives that rhythm by changing the notes, in other words. And the clarinets do that so well. In this case, the wind band version, they're actually performing the original harp part. And then it transitions on to Frank Duff, who was playing the flugel in this case, and furthermore of the slow air, essentially. I'll move you forward now into the march style. So you can hear that the tempo has changed. The sense of style has very much changed as well. And now we're moving towards something else, this kind of sense of foreboding, a climatic event, but we're not there yet. Bearing in mind that we are now roughly at about 1.5 minutes, maybe 1 minute 50, ever so slightly just above that. And that's how much music we've played. We've just had that opening transition into that slow air. Now we're into that main second section. And you'll hear this on the trumpets first of all. And a nice little moment to talk about there. So with the arranger hat on, first of all, the beauty of a wind band and any ensemble that has various different sonorities within it is that you can blend and exchange and change and retexture and layer. And in this case, for some of the instruments, you can actually vary their specific sound. For the likes of the trumpets, trombones, euphoniums, tubas, etc. Brass instruments that can put a mute in. And in the trumpets case, they have a variety, a wardrobe full of various different mutes, or at least they should do. In this case, we have some straight mutes going on. And it's nice to stick in a different sonority at this point, because it's the first time we've truly heard that style of mute playing. And it's quite distinctive. There's almost a percussive sense of it when trumpet players play it with a sense of attack. And there's almost a buzzing sense about it. So it really captures the attention of the audience and the listener. Hence the reason I thought this was a nice moment to put it in the score. For the same moment with the conductor's hat on, my attention is drawn to the trumpets for a different reason. Because they have the mutes in, obviously playing air through the instrument and making sure that it is free blowing. How the instrument is affected in terms of tuning now because of that mute being in the instrument. These are all things that, if they're not aware, the conductor will have to draw attention to. And we still have to refer back to the main tune at the very start. So we need to refer to the trumpets and talk about the breath and the control over that phrase. Should it be exactly like the first iteration of that tune, or should it be ever so slightly different? In this case, it is ever so slightly different and very, very legato in style. This continues on through the rest of the band, transfers to the saxophones and the clarinets, and then reaches somewhat of a climax further into the piece. Somewhere I'm judging right about here. And you can hear just there's about 15 seconds worth of music which you would regard maybe as no reference to O Rocher de Vahawalya. And you'd be right in thinking that, because what you need to do as an arranger is remembering that you need to keep people captivated, not repeating the same thing over and over again. So at this point, I decided that I would, to all intents and purposes, transition away from what is known as the specific tune for O Rocher de Vahawalya. However, it's actually the tune flipped and then reversed, and then ever so slightly ornamented as well, so that at least it retains enough of the original thread for me to say that it is still very much connected and refers back to that original piece of music. So now we have a fuller band coming in with that theme in the second section. And I'm just going to stop it here. Here's a very important moment for bands to be able to transition from one section to another seamlessly without feeling like without a bump, essentially. Feeling like the two sections are not connected in any way, shape, or form. And typically with bands or orchestras, in a moment where there's going to be some rubato, more specifically a ritenuto at this moment, it transitions into what feels like a slower tempo, and then we hit the jig. I prefer that the band dictate that themselves. And again, this is what we said last week, through the use of listening. So they can actually dictate the change of tempo. I will put them in the general space of what I think the tempo should transition out of. And if they don't meet with that close enough, then obviously we may stop the band and talk about that specifically. But for a conductor to specifically beat that transition of a tempo moving back will almost always not be gathered in intention by the instrumentalists, because they will all see various different things. Whereas if they are in symbiosis with the conductor, knowing that there is going to be something of a tempo change, in this case a rit, that they are going to listen to make sure, first of all, that they're playing with each other through that transitional phase as the tempo moves back, but also attaining enough of the integral music that's actually painted on the score. In this case, there's a diminuendo, a crescendo, and some changes of articulation as well. And at this point, we have a continuous build for roughly about 16 bars until we hit a climax. And then we pull away from the climax at that point and make sure that there is something of a refocus moment for the listener to say, well, actually, we're not going to give you that moment that you were expecting to happen. We're not going to hit that pinnacle just yet. We actually have the next iteration of the main tune, and as you can hear, there's some ornamentation on that piece of music now as it dances through this kind of more jig format. I will skip towards the end of the piece so that you can hear a little bit more. And basically at this point we've almost put white over the entire canvas of the score, and there's only a few lines now. If you can imagine actual artistry going on, there's only a few lines going through the score now, and basically we start to add lots more colour to the score the further we get from this point towards the end of the piece, which should be somewhere around here, I think. So there we are. That's O Rocher de Vaha Walya, and it is essentially Gather the Gales. You can hear how the tapestry essentially builds to a climax at the end of the first three sections and then falls each time until we get to that very, very big moment right at the very end. We've got a fuller score, all of the band are dancing, all the percussion are bringing together that moment of final climax. This idea of transitioning from being far away from home, starting to march maybe towards a war, a moment of impact, and seeing that impact right at the very end of the score. My own preference, having now delivered Gather the Gales originally as an orchestral piece for the RT Concert Orchestra, finding its way onto the Wind Band and Brass Band 2, most recently played by the Foden's Brass Band in the UK. My own favourite, I have to say, I think it works the best on the Wind Band because of the nature of the sonorities, the instruments, and the ability to mix what is almost that trad-like quality within a wind band, where you've got flutes and clarinets and saxophones and various different instruments that add that beautiful colour that just feels like it's in that traditional music setting. So there we are with composer, arranger and conductor corner for DCBtv for this week. Very shortly I'm going to welcome a friend, a dear friend, into our Friends of DCB to talk a little bit about the work that he's doing and a much better person at the stuff that I'm trying to do at the minute. But he's also doing some amazing stuff right across the country. But before I invite him in, what I'd like to do is play a little piece of music for you so you can actually see what he actually where he comes from as a musician. What an ending, Keith. I hope you can hear me okay, and I hope everybody at
I
home can hear you
absolutely.
okay as well. You're very welcome to DCB
Thanks,
TV.
Brendan.
I'm not sure I warned you that I was going to play that piece of music.
I think that was the first attempt at one of these virtual recordings as well.
That so I when I found that, I think that's some 2 months ago that you
Isn't
did
that
that.
insane?
It's
I'd had
really
a
hard to
proper
believe.
haircut back then.
How many times have you shaved the beard at this point? Since we're
This is
doing
my fourth beard.
yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. That's absolutely. Listen, you're very welcome. And as I said, you certainly are the person that kind of set the stall for this very early on. So I'm not looking to fill your shoes in any way. What we're trying to do with DCB TV is make sure that people know that the band hasn't gone away. To share some insightful information, or what I hope is insightful information, about the practice of conducting and arranging and things like that, and give some of the band members an opportunity to share some advice, some insight. For example, we just had Joanna Kenny on, who is now doing contact tracing, a member of the Defence Force Band, and obviously a brilliant flautist as well. But we wanted to talk to you as a friend of DCBTV and give us your background, essentially, and all of the stuff, the amazing stuff that you're doing at the minute.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of months, Brendan. I'm still trying to figure out myself what I'm doing at the moment. By the way, I mean the DCB TV concept is a great idea. I mean, particularly for a band that's similar to, and there's my daughter crying outside. Particularly for a band such as yours as well, that has all these adult members and that I suppose the band rehearsal, like similar to my senior band, the band that's low here. The adult members rely on this from as a social setting. You know, I know we all miss music. Like I get that. I miss music too. But I think probably that the most important thing that a community band gives people is that sense of coming together on a week-to-week basis for a shared project, and we're all missing that so much. So something like this can be a way for just connecting, like for the rest of the band to see Joanna there tonight, you know, is something, and for them to connect in with you on a week-to-week basis as well. So it's a great idea. I mean, I kind of came to this in a similar capacity. Day one of my lockdown, was the day before St. Patrick's Day. And I just had this idea that I'd start talking to some of the band directors that had been cancelled, you know, that were due to come over with their bands on St. Patrick's Day with me. For anyone that doesn't know, sort of my day-to-day job is kind of bringing these bands and choirs and orchestras into Ireland. And yeah, I just decided that it would be a good chance to maybe talk to them and see how they are and catch up and let other people see it then as well. And we just kicked off from there. It's been a transitional couple of months, all right.
I mean,
look, I've even got like headphones and a microphone and studio lighting. Like it's been.
I know. I mean, if you are doing that compare and contrast, because we're side by side on Zoom, I look quite terrible and sound quite terrible, and you look amazing and sound quite amazing. But the whole point is that it's a learning process, and I think you kind of confirm the point that people are finding a different way to engage and express themselves, and it's been amazing what you've done. And we've obviously spoken about this before. In terms of creating a platform for bands across Ireland, for bands in Ireland internationally, how we connect bands from the international setting to Ireland as well. I mean, in your day-to-day, that's something yourself and Dave have been doing so well, with a really unusual model of having an artistic, musical practice within what is essentially kind of a touring body, right?
Yeah, and it's much more common over in the States, actually. You know, you go to any of these big tour operators in the United States, and they nearly always have like an ex-band director as, you know, as the owner of the company. And in fact, there's plenty of them that have only music educators that work for them. And I think it's, you know, if you're a band director or if you're a band chairperson or any sort of organizer for bands, and you've had to move like many people, you know, from the band room to a concert on a regular basis or on an international tour, I think you just have a natural gift at this sort of thing anyway. So it makes sense. David just had the foresight to maybe see that it would be good to have someone in an Irish capacity that will be doing that and will be able to connect with American directors as well. Yeah, I mean, look, we as a company, Celtic Horizon Tours, we kind of were 4 or 5 weeks ahead of this in some ways, because we were very conscious of these bands and choirs that were due to come in for St. Patrick's Day. and it was becoming increasingly unlikely. We were on a day-to-day basis in touch with like St. Patrick's Festival, trying to find out, what was happening, trying to maybe help them or guide them to having plan Bs put in place for all these bands. And we went through so many different contingency plans over that period. So by the time that we got to the 16th of March, when we knew it was all over, we were already kind of thinking, okay, we've got to think long term on this. This isn't going to go away anytime soon. And that's kind of where this idea that I kind of knew, and David did too, that we weren't going to see any bands or choirs in 2020. Like, that just wasn't going to happen. And the best thing that we could do to kind of keep the company in the spotlight and keep Ireland kind of in people's minds when they're thinking about touring was to talk and put it on Facebook and put it on social media. And that's kind of why. That's kind of how I have the time for this, because it's supported by my job, really,
Yeah, I think it's truly amazing what you've done. It hasn't really been done, I would suggest, from an Irish context before. So it is brilliant to see that, and the possibilities of connections, which is something which I think every Irish band, orchestra, choir, musical ensemble really revels in. In terms of your work with the bands of Ireland, because you've got so many, you have so many hats on. Well, actually, let's go back to Ballinasloe. So Ballinasloe Town Band.
How's the band?
Yeah, how are they doing?
Well, just before, the reason I couldn't get on any earlier was because we were doing a scavenger hunt with the kids.
Wow.
Which was bedlam. I had to lock myself in my room because my two kids are in the band too. So the idea, if you haven't done a scavenger hunt, you should definitely do it on DCBtv. Okay. I think it will be hilarious to do this with all the DCB members. But the idea is that I'm calling out things like find something blue, and they all run off and they find something blue, and the first person back gets 5 points, second person 3 points, and third person 1 point, and we do 10 rounds of that. And it's like the simplest possible thing to do with them, absolutely nothing to do with music. But they loved it, and they got to interact with each other in a way that they haven't had a chance to do for a long time.
Yeah.
So we're trying to alternate a little bit of music tuition with just socializing. Our band is particularly our youth band, which is the big cohort of the band anyway. We had just over 60 kids recruited in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And which is amazing for a small little town, which just shows you the hunger that town had for getting their band back up and running. But they're so young that trying to do any sort of significant music tuition right now at the moment was just it was very difficult. So we're alternating, and even the music. So we have a fun week, and then we have a music week, and even the music week. I don't teach them up via Zoom or anything like that. It's disastrous. I won't even try it. So what I'm doing is I'm sending them videos. Pre-recorded videos where I say, okay, we're all looking at our book this week. We're doing exercise number 5 and number 7, and your job is to record yourself doing this. And now we'll do a little 10-minute lesson on these pieces. Eric Kramer, Jane's brother, he's doing the same for the brass. He's our brass instructor over there, and his 2 kids are in the band too. Obviously, DCBtv. I have to mention the Kramers, don't I?
You wouldn't be allowed back in if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So he's doing the same for the brass. I'm doing it for the woodwind. Interestingly, we were having trouble with getting proper percussion instruction.
Okay.
Our percussion instructor has been sick for quite some time, so I've actually been teaching. But it's actually like if you're not good at teaching an instrument in the first place, which I'm not good at teaching percussion, trying to do that via Zoom and actually recording all those mistakes you're making. Not a chance. So what I've actually been doing with that is getting international people that I know. So I've had Leandro Pasquale from Brazil doing stuff for them. Colin Bell, one of the drum corps international guys, he's been doing stuff for them. So that's all pre-recorded and going to get out to those kids now soon. So I haven't even had to touch that. That's
amazing. You went essentially from zero to absolute hero in a very short space of time.
Totally zero.
I wouldn't say that. That's absolutely amazing. Just to flip it on a different hat, then obviously you've got the Bands of Ireland as well, and the Global Band Room. I mean, how are you managing all the work, and what do the two facilitate?
Okay, well, so first of all, how I'm managing the work is, as I was kind of mentioning earlier on, I'm sort of in a really great position that I'm essentially supported by Celtic Rising Tours to go out there and promote banding right now at the moment. We're not, as I said earlier on, we're not going to get any international bands into this country anytime soon. I have my suspicions about 2021 even, even if we're all back in our band rooms, international trips, I don't know. We'll see. But so the best thing that we can be doing right now at the moment is being out there promoting Irish bands, promoting the banding community and so on. So Bands of Ireland was started, it's about 8 months ago now. Myself and Barbara Dowling and Mallory Anderson and myself and Barbara, if we come together, we're the yin to each other's yang. And we just had this idea. We had kind of half done it with the Irish Symphonic Wind Orchestra Facebook page anyway, where if someone was doing a concert, we'd always share it on the ISWO page. And we said, we just actually do our own page for this and actually make it its own thing. So it really just started as a Facebook page, right. And then as happens, kind of ideas kind of ran off that, and where it really kind of got the attention was the Ireland's Call project then that we did. Well, actually, prior to that, we had done the awards. The awards were actually something that a lot of people picked up on, and we had a huge amount of lovely submissions from people telling their stories about, important people in their bands to them. And we'll be running that again next year then as well. But where most people started hearing about the Bands of Ireland thing was the Ireland's Call thing. Which, in fairness, wasn't my idea whatsoever. That was John Carpenter, and I, as often as I can, I keep on trying to make sure that John gets the credit for that. Like that was completely John's idea, and he did a lot of the hard work behind it. I was just, as normal, the person talking about it.
Amazing, and for anybody watching that isn't aware, John is obviously a captain in the Defence Forces band and a fantastic arranger, composer, conductor as well. So
and Drogheda Brass Band then as well. So he's he's actually after doing quite a number of virtual projects with Drogheda Brass Band too. So
and a shout out to them. They're quite brilliant actually. And our plan for next week with DCBtv is actually kind of frame for any bands that are out there. And this is just a quick shout out if anybody wants to see their videos put up here. We'll be happy to play them towards the end of the episode as well. So taking the step into the global band room, obviously that's the international connection and an opportunity to connect with the kind of
reputable. If you go onto the Bands of Ireland website, actually you'll see that it actually has its own page now. It's the global band room page, and essentially when I started doing all of these interviews, it wasn't just going to be with Irish band directors. I wanted to kind of bring in people, through WASB and WOMSB, Drum Corps International. I've been really lucky over the last number of years to get to know lots of international people. And one of the things I wanted to do was kind of share the idea that we're we're all in this same boat right now at the moment. We really are. I've talked to people from Venezuela, Malaysia, China, Canada, Brazil, Colombia, and next week I have Christopher Philander from Rwanda, from the Rwandan Defence Forces.
Amazing.
On it as well. He's a super clarinet player, brilliant English, and we chatted to him too. So and everyone's saying the same stories. It was amazing. Is that everyone is telling these exact same stories about missing their band buddies and missing they don't say the crack, but they're missing the crack from those band rehearsals.
Yeah, and this is something that we obviously talked about on my interview on your show. And I quite honestly admit this, that every time I walk into the band room, I'm thinking about high level skill repertoire and getting it all refined. Yeah. Musicians aren't thinking, not all of them. There's a blend, but for people that are missing that social cohesion at the minute, it's a big impact for mental health. And emotional health as well. So there's a number of layers to this that we won't really be able to quantify until we start to get out of lockdown. And I've said to so many people, I don't know about you, the more I think about that first moment being back in a band room with a band, with a baton, or God forbid somebody makes me play a drum ever again, I think it's going to be very emotional because we're lacking
so
that.
much longer than we even ever thought it was going to go on, and we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, I'm sorry to sound pessimistic about that, but it's going to be a while before we're actually sitting in band rooms in the traditional sense. You know, that we may have workarounds, and we may meet up outdoors, and we may do, like, you know, in our case, we might do some marching later on in the summer if we're able to meet up in a big field. I don't think DCB has marched in a while, actually. Have you?
No, I think the last time we marched, and DCB, who are watching online, of which I'm sure there are many, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time might have been in Germany at Bad Schlemme, when I was an assistant MD, and that was, we were there for music. There was a beer tent, but there was a lot of marching, and it was interesting. But you know, it was great fun. It was in great spirit. We weren't there to win prizes for marching. Let's put it like that. But it was brilliant fun. And
if DCB ever need a marching instructor, I'm happy to come along, and we can get you some color guard and all that. You know, we just like. You know, maybe something to think about.
There you go. Well, you've said it online, so let's see you'll see the response now live online as well.
I must say, just speaking about marching band, I just wanted to make reference to the IMBA's competition that they're running right now at the moment. So the IMBA, the Irish Marching Band Association, I'm on the council for that, and they're running an IME competition, individual and ensemble competition right now at the moment, and people of all ages, all abilities. Any instrument, you can send in a video of yourself up to 5 minutes long, performing a piece of music, and it will be submitted to their Facebook page, and there'll be the Irish judges for the IMBA will be judging winners. They'll pick the categories once they see the submissions that they get in. They'll then fill them into various different categories. So it's another opportunity to kind of perform. It's something I don't know whether you've seen the music marathon that we did back with Jessica Harris, but the Troops, the Troop family from the Academy, actually.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah.
Holy.
Yeah.
They've both submitted for it. My kids have submitted for it. All the Ballinasloe kids are Mullingar Town Band and so on. So look, if anyone has an interest in kind of taking part and just maybe supporting the IMBA more so than really even necessarily taking part in the competition side of this, but it's just to kind of support and bring attention to the IMBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
All their events have been cancelled as well this year, you know.
And you know what? It's great to see in the light of, because you know, obviously there are negatives in the context of the AIBCB haven't been able to hold their event. I see the Northern Ireland Band Association have had now, and quite rightly, it's a sensible decision. It doesn't bring anybody any pleasure, but it's a sensible decision. But it is great to see the likes of the IMBA and indeed the IABCB with Kevin, etc., going as far as they can to fill a gap with you know, some kind of online practice and something of a kind of a reflection upon competition, if you like, but in a different way, in a different manner, and something that I don't know about you, but I'm nearly hopeful that we retain some of that essence, because it has changed ever so slightly, absolutely, the kind of the competitive process. I think it's really nice to see.
Some of these international opportunities, like you know, the Lone Star Wind Orchestra had this project that they had. I know quite a few DCB people recorded themselves for it as well. That they had a new premiere by Julie Giroux called River Shannon, actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was, which is fantastic. She actually kind of based it on her trip to Ireland last year. And they recorded themselves and invited people from around the world to record themselves. So I know, like, if you're not on the Global Band Room Facebook group, I mean, you can head over there, and we're always sharing opportunities for people to get involved in these global opportunities. The Polish Wind Orchestra, a lot of us have recorded ourselves with them. The Lone Star Wind Orchestra, River City Rhythm Drum Corps over in the US. So like, there's lots of opportunities for people to play, and there will be again over the summer, you know.
That's amazing. So just before you leave us, let people know where they can connect in with you, all the various kind of different online spaces, and give yourself a bit of an opportunity to broadcast.
Okay, well, the first one, probably most relevant to all you guys, will be Bands of Ireland. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and then there's bandsofIreland.com is the website. On the website, you're going to find out a little bit more about the Global Band Room, which is on Facebook then predominantly as well. We have the Facebook page, the Global Band Room podcast, and that's been released on a Monday and Thursday. And then we have the Facebook group then, where people are able to share their own projects and interact. And there's a huge amount of interaction going. We've over 1,000 people from around the world in that group now at the moment, and everyone's sharing various different ideas. And then Ballinasloe Town Band. Oh, and I can't forget to mention the Irish Symphonic Wind Orchestra as well, which is unfortunately cancelled in September. But we're busy working ahead to our plans for 2021 now too.
Yeah, again, it doesn't bring anybody any pleasure, but I think it's a sensible decision in the light of everything going on. And I know, obviously, there's so many DCB members in the band as well.
A huge amount.
As indeed there is in the next video that I'm going to play before you leave us, cool. Keith. So what I'd like to do is actually play the Ireland's Call for everybody at home who hasn't. If they haven't seen it, I don't know where they've been, because there's been nowhere to go. They must have been under a rock. It was and obviously it was on the Late Late Show as well. So would you like to introduce it, and then I'll hit play?
Yeah, well, Ireland's Call. It was brought. The idea was brought by John Carpenter to Bands of Ireland a number of months ago, and it was a combination between John, myself, Barbara Dowling, Stephen Mackin put the video together. Mark Armstrong did all the sound production, as well as Brian Masterson as well, and then a huge effort from all the musicians that were involved. Over 1,000 submissions to it. We covered every continent in the world with this. So far, it's been the biggest project that I'm aware of out of these various different virtual projects. So it really just did capture the imagination of people, and it was the birth of that Facebook group, the Global Band Room group too. So. Amazing.
Listen, congratulations on that and everything else. And we might check in with you again at some stage. We might do a little regular featurette with you. But from all of us and from myself, I love obviously catching up with you and we'll talk to the wee hours about banding with you. But thanks for joining us on DCB TV.
Thanks, Brendan, and best of luck to everyone in DCB, and hoping to see you all you guys and some sort of big banding bash when we all get back together again.
Absolutely, we look forward to it. All right, Keith, feel free to sign off whenever you want. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Ireland's Call. There we are, Ireland's Call, and thanks again to Keith Kelly for joining us here on DCB TV. Well, that's it for episode 2. That's everything for this week. Thanks once again to Keith, and obviously then our DCB members, Joanna and Alan, for joining us. Next week, more DCB members will be seeing Inside the Band Room, another virtual performance from our concert in February with the Boher Boy Band back in Windmill Lane, more insight from Conductor's Corner, and more to come with friends of DCB TV. For now, please stay well, stay safe, and we look forward to welcoming you all back next week.